Hey, what is going on, guys? And welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, where today we are starting a brand new series on this channel, which will be dedicated to in-depth ships review. And today in our first review, we are looking at Darth Maul's Scimitar. I've made several videos building up to this point, and I promised you guys for a long time we'll get there, and today we are finally starting in that territory where we look at ships. And as I like to do in my character reviews, I want to give you some background information and the history behind the ship we're talking about. So let's talk about the history of the Scimitar. Now, the Scimitar, or also known in certain circumstances as the Sith Infiltrator, was the personal ship that Darth Maul piloted, and upon his defeat on Naboo, Darth Sidious took ownership of it. This ship was secretly modified from a Star Courier, where it featured 2 additional laser cannons on top of the 4 that were already present, along with a cloaking device which allowed the ship to disappear from a pursuer or to slip under the enemy's defenses. The ship was also known to carry some SRK-1 probe droids and the Sith Speeder, as we saw in Darth Maul's mission on Tatooine. And in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, we continue to see the Scimitar utilize its cloaking device to hide under the radar, but to spring out in action to apply deadly blows to its enemies. So starting our conversation on the game in particular, we first want to talk about how do you unlock the Scimitar in this game. Well, there's a free-to-play method and a pay-to-play method. Now, the free-to-play method, you need to have patience like a saint because you can find it only in the fleet shipments. For 400 fleet currency, you can get 4 blueprints of Darth Maul's Scimitar. And through the pay-to-play method, just like the Chromium packs, they have the Fleet Mega Card Data Pack where you can use your hard-earned crystals, pull some cards, and you probably will get some Darth Maul blueprints, as they do show up quite frequently. However, if you take the free-to-play route, which I've taken myself, the estimated time to get the 5 stars, because unlike the ground-based events, 5 stars is kind of the goal to get to, so you can start doing the Zeta Mat challenges, looks something like this. If you can at least get 4 blueprints a day, you are looking at roughly 36 days to get to 5 stars, but maybe less or maybe more depending on your luck in terms of the frequency in which the blueprints show up, because it might not be there all the time, so it's always the luck of the draw to see if those blueprints show up in a particular time. The next order of business is, what do you need to pilot the ship? Luckily, you do not need too much, unlike some other powerful ships in the game. All you need for this is Darth Maul to be unlocked at any star count and at any gear level with or without mods. Of course, the higher the star count of Darth Maul, the better the mods, as well as other things like gear level, do contribute quite a lot to ships, as I will explain in another video at another time. The next thing up on the list is the stats of this ship. How does it compare to all the other ships in the game? What's the averages? What's the maximum? What's the minimum? And I will talk about just that. And another limitation with this data as of now, I cannot find any data that shows the maximum amount of damage, so the amount of stats that we look at for the pros, averages, and cons will be quite limited as of now, but we have plenty to work with, and I have plenty of footage to show you how they participate in Arena. So first off, let's start with the pros, and he's rocking a couple of interesting things here. First of all, he is number 6 in protection. The average amount of protection for ships as of now is 13,138, and the Scimitar has 36,069. Now we talk about the averages, and it's nothing really crazy to report. In terms of potency, the average is 39%. However, the Scimitar is at 40%, but pretty much there is not a significant difference in potency all among the ships. They're all kind of clustered around the same 39%, 40%, so nothing too different or too unique to report here. Lastly, we gotta get on to the cons. Yeah, that stuff Chewbacca wants to cry about. And they're actually quite big things that we need to address. First of all, he is number 18 in speed, and that's out of 25 ships, do keep in mind. The average amount of speed in this game for ships is 160, and the Scimitar is at 147, and that plays a huge role when considering how to use them in Fleet Arena. Next, we have health, where it is number 19. Average amount of health for a ship in this game is 74,329, and the Scimitar is at 68,989, so not too far off, but still it is below the average of most other ships in the game. And lastly, the last con I need to address is armor, where it is number 21. Average is 279 and the Scimitar is 226. So with those numbers out of the way, we're going to examine the Scimitar's kit and abilities, and we first look at Dread Cannons. Now I'm going to explain more about this in my personal thoughts, but let's just lay out the facts on how these abilities work. Dread Cannons, essentially what it does is it deals physical damage to a target enemy, and if the Scimitar is stealth, it removes 80% turn meter, which is huge, and the Scimitar loses its stealth. Looking at the Scimitar's unique, it is called Lurking Threat, and what this does is essentially it gives all stealth allies 32.5% additional offense. In addition, anytime an enemy reinforcement comes into play, the Scimitar automatically inflicts target lock on them for 2 turns. Again, this is pretty big, and we will talk about that in a few moments here. And the last ability, which is quite huge as well for Darth Maul, is known as Slip Through. It has a 3-turn cooldown, and what it does is that it targets an ally of your choice and gives them protection up, or 50% protection, plus retribution for 2 turns, and all other allies gain stealth for 2 turns. Since ships do not need any gear of any sort, I can go straight into my subjective part of the review, where I talk about my personal thoughts and even mortal enemies, best friends, a lot of the stuff you guys are familiar with. And I first want to start off with my personal thoughts on this ship. Now, the Scimitar is overall a fantastic ship, and one that I highly recommend getting to be one of your 5-star ships so you can complete the Zeta Mat Challenge easily. Once I got the Scimitar to 5 stars, I instantly was able to 3-star the Zeta Mat Challenge because he totally made a difference for me. Even though he is a very long farm, it is one that is well worth it. It's probably better in the long run to invest in a ship that will pay off a lot in the end versus just quickly farming a ship and then losing its viability very quickly. He deals decent damage and will give offense to other ships on your team that go stealth so they can hit the enemy extra hard. His slip-through ability is what makes him shine. Being able to make one ship take all the heat and give them retribution is kind of the equivalent of making someone taunt for you. Everyone's hiding and that person's taking all the heat, which can be very dangerous. If giving it to someone like Biggs Darklighter, they're going to constantly counterattack, probably apply target lock, and constantly refill their protection, which can be really detrimental to the other team who is trying to win. Also, another benefit of having your team go under the cover of stealth is that it gives you some breathing time to try to recoup your team, give them protection, give them health, so once they spring back out of stealth, they are ready to go for another round of attacks. However, with this great power also comes some big drawbacks, and that big drawback is mainly his speed. It is one of the slower ships in the game, and that means if he is in your starting lineup, then it might be quite a long time before he can finally go and use his slip-through ability, which is pretty much what you want to use him for. And being so slow gives the enemy many opportunities and plenty of time to take out the Scimitar because it is a pretty big threat on the field. Therefore, one of the strategies I recommend you use is put him in your reinforcements, because when you call a reinforcement in, they gain 100% turn meter. And when you gain 100% turn meter with the Scimitar, you instantly want to use the slip through ability. And also the AI knows this. When it calls in Darth Maul, it automatically uses slip through as the first ability no matter what, assuming it is not ability blocked. And then of course, when the enemy is calling loads of reinforcements, this allows the Scimitar to apply target lock left and right, setting up his allies for big attacks and big debuffs. Now regarding mortal enemies, there's a couple big guys in here that you need to be aware of. Firstly, mainly ability block ships are big mortal enemies, because if you're ability blocking him from using slip through, he's not doing too much. Also, buff stripping characters are also somewhat of an issue because they can remove retribution off the ship you selected to counterattack constantly while everyone is hiding under the covers. Next, Daze. That's also something countering retribution that Darth Maul can give. Also, buff immunity is a big issue because if you apply a buff immunity to either Darth Maul or the other ships on the field, they can't go stealth, they can't gain retribution, all those great things. And also, tenacity up is also a big issue because if you can't remove turn meter or if you can't apply target lock, you kind of have a little issue on your hands then. When looking at best friends, there are tons of best friends because especially with his target lock that he can apply frequently on reinforcements, sets his allies up for some pretty big attacks. Characters that have high health and high protection also work great with Darth Maul because when you want your other ships to go stealth, you usually want to pick the ship with a lot of protection and a lot of health that can take the heat while everyone is ducking under cover and getting ready for the next attack. I highly recommend using Biggs as one of the candidates because if you give him retribution, he'll constantly counterattack, apply target lock, and gain loads of protection. This might be an odd choice, but TIE Fighter Pilot also works pretty good as the retribution candidate because normally TIE Fighter Pilot never has protection. However, once Darth Maul selects him, TIE Fighter Pilot gains a lot of protection, and if he's evading, which he does frequently, that means TIE Fighter Pilot is giving loads of turn meter to the fleet's commander. And of course, TIE Fighter Pilot can also apply target lock. So long story short, characters that have high health, high protection, apply target lock on their basic, like even Boba Fett himself. That means you're setting up a really great character to cover for you while all the other ships are getting ready to spring back out of stealth. So these ships in-depth reviews are going to be a bit short. Of course, if you have some other things you want me to talk about, I can totally toss those in our reviews. But as of now, at this point, I want to segue straight into our Hall of Fame for the ships. And instead of having 5 categories, we're making 3 because ships are a lot less differential compared to the normal characters in the game where there's a lot of variance between the characters. And when looking at this table from Grandmaster to Youngling, I am putting the Scimitar in the Grandmaster category. This is a super flexible ship, and if you're farming him free to play or pay to play, it really will pay off in the long run, both for Fleet Arena, Zeta Mat challenges, and whatever else ships might develop into. So I highly recommend you farm this character, especially at least to 5 stars. So there you guys have it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Of course, this is my first ships in-depth review, so if you have some feedback, please let me know. And also, if there's a ship you really want to see in particular, like let's say Kylo Ren's shuttle, please let me know down below in the comments, and I will take your guys' votes for the next ships in-depth review. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a like, comment down below on what your thoughts are and what I should do next, and subscribe for more Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes content, and we will talk again soon. Peace out.